As a European musician who grew up on American music, I've always dreamed of visiting the US one day. And I did. But no one warned me about this though. Ciao tutti, Blind Boy Davide here. I just came back from my US trip, traveling the US for 1 month. And I have some things I want to talk about. As a heads up, I visited the South. So the impressions and thoughts and feelings I have are specifically about the trip that I made in Nashville, a good week in Memphis, both in Tennessee, a couple of days in New Orleans, and finally Austin, Texas. Let's talk about the good things first. So the thing that struck me the most and that I loved the most was obviously the music. The level of musicianship that I've encountered is insane. I mean, it's something that you can almost not imagine when you're used to, going to the clubs here. I mean, I live here in Switzerland. And especially Nashville and Memphis were like, oof, oh my goodness. You could go to like any day of the week at some random bar or restaurant and there would be a band. There would be a band just absolutely crushing it. And I love that. I love that very, very, very much. And you can tell that it has a place in the society. So society values music, live music, good musician. Something that I always like to say is here in Switzerland, I've sadly had to get used to the question like, oh, can you make a living for music? Like, can you pay the rent with music? Can you do this? Like, I mean, how dare you? Why does it matter to you if I can fully pay my rent with music or not? I just think that's a little bit disrespectful. And I've never been asked that question in the States, which kind of tells you a little bit about where things are at, doesn't it? No one questions whether music is a real job or not. It's just something to be respected. And I mean, that's it. One thing that I also loved was, particularly in Nashville, you could just feel and see how there are multiple paths that you can, go on as a musician. So if you're more interested in session work or being in the studio, working in the studio, recording music, or whether you just want to, hunker down, join a band, play live, or you could just focus on writing songs, being a songwriter, pitching your songs, joining the so-called writers' nights, which I've also discovered in Nashville, really gives you the sense that this is like a real trade. Of course, then you can do your own music and do that whole thing. But that was something like, that's pretty cool. There is a lot of supply, there's a lot of musicians, but there's also a lot of demand. And I do, talk specifically about Nashville here again, because that's where I felt it was the strongest. One more thing, the guitar stores. Oh my God. I mean, whether in Memphis or Austin or like Nashville, the guitar stores were amazing. Got to play the vintage guitars and all that. Of course, I love that. Just as a little bonus. I want to share one personal story about music and what I was lucky enough to experience. So this happened in Memphis, and I did go to Al Green's church on a Sunday. I wanted to experience gospel music and service. It was incredible. It was really, really amazing. I enjoyed myself immensely. And then afterwards, I got to chat with the keyboard player. His name is Beer. I just said, thank you for the music. And he told me he was the musical director of the band. And he was like, what are you doing afterwards? And I'm like, yeah, I thought about getting something to eat. And he's like, come on, I'll take you with me. And he just gave me a ride. And not only did he give me a ride, but we ended up hanging out like from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 9 o'clock at night. He just showed me around downtown Memphis, Mississippi River, Peabody Hotel. And we ended up in this club, which is called Havana Mix. His friends of his playing there. It was a cigar club, so everybody was smoking cigars. Kind of odd, but really cool. and there was a band, guitar, drums, and bass playing, and different singers, and like one killer singer after another, crushing it, and I'm just there like, oh my god, where have I landed? This is amazing. It was just off of Beale Street. He introduced me to the host. The host was like, "Oh, so you're a musician too? You sing? So why don't you sit in with us in the next song?" I'm like, "Oh my god, they are all so crazy. I don't know if I can do this." But I said, what the hell? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna give it a try. So they called me up, and I did get to sing a song with them. I did brainstorm with B-Ray outside. Oh, what song could I play and stuff, and so I got on stage. And the club was like all, I don't know if it was a coincidence, but I was the only white guy in the room. And, but that didn't really matter to me. So it was awesome. I sang I Got a Woman, and I got some hollers, some friendly hollers, and some nice words of respect, high fives and all that. So that's my personal favorite musical memory of the trip. Number 2, I loved the weather. Now, obviously, this is about the South again, specifically. The weather was just great, and a lot of sunshine, for March and beginning of April. I'm not used to that much sunshine, and just, being able to throw on some shorts at night and grab a bite somewhere, whether it was in Nashville, and obviously, New Orleans and Austin was pretty hot, and not a lot of rain, and I mean, I loved it. I thought that was really, really, really cool. The weather was like fantastico. People hanging out on their porch. You walk by, they're like, "Hey, how's it going there?" Blah, blah. It was just very cool, and people are outside, and I think it does something to you if you're outside more often. If you're, even though if you're not in a forest or anything, but even just being outside more. I think it does something to you, and seeing the blue sky and sunshine more often most certainly also does something to you. So yeah, this is maybe unimportant to most of you, but for me personally, I'm very sensitive to temperature, room temperature, sleeping and all that. And they have these cool, I don't know what you call them. You set 2 different numbers for the temperatures. The lower number is the number it gets heated to, and the higher number is when it's getting hot, cools down to that higher number. And I thought that was so clever and so cool, because the temperatures sometimes would vary quite a bit. And in Switzerland, mostly the houses are designed to heat up, but if it gets crazy hot, there's no way to cool down unless you like go into the river or something or take a cold shower. And in Italy, houses are more laid out to, cool down for the hot temperatures, but they're not as advanced, when it comes to floor heating. I mean, there is floor heating and stuff, but you don't find it as often, and electricity costs a lot in Italy in general. Number 3, the people. Super open, super friendly, and I was a little bit scared coming, going or arriving in America and being on my own, solo traveling, because I haven't done that in a long time. And I was just scared to, spend a lot of time on my own, I guess. But I'll tell you, every day I went out, I pretty much got to talk to someone, or someone was saying like, "Hey, where are you from? I hear an accent, da da da." And people were super open, super friendly, super talkative. And I really enjoyed that a lot, because in Switzerland, people tend to be a little more introvert. And even in southern Italy, where I have a lot of family and I visit often, if they don't really know you, they won't, be curious like that. At least that's my experience. So the southern hospitality is definitely a thing, and it's a great one. I got into so many spontaneous, awesome conversations just going out, and, you end up talking to this guy or that girl, and it's really cool. One funny story I want to share from Nashville again was Broadway, Lower Broadway. I went to, there's so many clubs there with live band and amazing rock music, country, blues, anything you want. There was a group of like elderly women. I mean, they must have been in their elderly. I don't want to be disrespectful. Maybe they were in their 60s, maybe 50s, I don't know. In Swiss German, we say hemmige, kai hemmige ha. they were just, what's the word? Unhinged, not afraid, unafraid. I mean, they were dancing their butts off, like not giving two, like they wouldn't care like who was looking or who wasn't looking. They were just throwing down the craziest dance moves, and I thought that was the coolest thing I ever saw. Just like, wow, this is life, okay? And this is something that, in Switzerland, sometimes you go to a show and it can be a killer show, like an awesome show. But if it's like a smaller city or a smaller place, people in the audience will be like this, like the most incredible act could be on stage at that moment, and they will just be like this with their glass in hand. That's a little bit sad, but it's also like part of the whole introvert thingy. So those were the three big things that I loved about my trip in the South. Now let's talk about the three things that I just thought sucked. Number one, the car-centric infrastructure. I hated that. I'm sorry, I'm biased. I'm used to walking around everywhere I please and having great public transportation. And again, that applies to the places that I've visited. I know New York is not like that. Some other American cities have good public transport too. I was trying to walk most of the time, and I mean, everything is spread apart and you cannot really do that all the time. So thank you, Uber, for saving me on multiple occasions. And I just couldn't walk for 4 hours to go to some place. I would just take an Uber, which is fine. But also just the fact that it's almost like you don't exist as a pedestrian, I can't tell you how many times I've actually almost gotten run over by some gal or man on their phone driving outside of a drive-through takeaway. That happened to me 3 times, almost. They just wouldn't look. They're not used to people, walking on the sidewalk. It's crazy. Yeah, I wouldn't really feel safe driving a bicycle either, no matter if it's in Nashville, Memphis, New Orleans, or Austin. Although Austin, I thought, was definitely the most, I want to say, people were driving a little bit more carefully, but still, that's something I didn't really appreciate that much. Number 2, the food. I thought that was a stereotype, but that's my personal opinion. Again, I feel like the quality of food here in Europe, I'm going to say Switzerland, Italy is even a little higher. The quality or the standard we have for good food, a good meal, I feel like is higher than in the US. Now that differs, whether you're in New Orleans where you have culinary culture, or Memphis and Nashville where it's not so much the case. I know steaks and ribs and stuff, that's a culinary culture too, but it's just not as varied or healthy as some things that maybe us here in Europe are used to. Now again, I don't want to say this in a disparaging way, but it's just my personal opinion. One crazy thing that stuck with me was I went into this organic store, but I did see it in normal stores too, where I looked at a pack of spinach or some tomatoes, and spinach was $7. Even at Aldi's, it was a pound of spinach $6 or $5. That's 3 times as much as what we pay here for spinach, And then you go to some local burger joint, and you can get a burger and fries for $6 or even cheaper sometimes. Eating fast food is cheaper than going to a store and buying local produce or even non-local veggies and trying to eat a healthy life. That's something that honestly shocked me. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but the whole, trying to keep the people ignorant and sick so they need medicine and then they get prescription and that whole machinery behind it. Got a couple of thoughts in that direction too, but just, eating healthy is more expensive there than eating non-healthy, which is insane. Here, it's the opposite. And the last thing, I am used to drink the tap water we have here, which is amazing. Like it doesn't have an aftertaste or anything. Of course, we have the mountains and the lakes, but this is very, very specific to Switzerland. Any other place in the world where I've been, even where they have clean water, just has a strange taste, or it tastes. You can smell the chlor or something. Chlor? What's it called? You know, white stuff. Is it white? Anyways. And obviously there I had to buy gallons and gallons of water, which that closes out point number 2. Point number 3, and these are in no particular order, but this last point might be, for me, the most important point or thing that I disliked the most was safety. I'm not used to being told, you can't go there, you cannot go there at this hour of the night, you have to stay in this part of town. I'm like, what? Especially in Memphis, they were like, after sundown, you just don't walk around anymore on the streets. You just don't. I'm like, are you sure? And everybody was like, yes. And I asked like 4 people, and they all said the same thing. Like, after sundown, you get an Uber, no matter where you are or where you need to go. And honestly, you know, walking around by myself, I really did feel, and I walked around quite a bit in different parts of town also. Memphis and New Orleans, you know, had some pretty sketchy part of town. And I think what makes it all the more dangerous, or, you know, where you start seeing the violent scenarios, is because of the very loose gun laws. So anyone who tries to rob you could have a gun on him legally. One wrong move or one stupid thing you say, and you can just end up losing your life, or at least so I thought. And I never really risked or dared any, you know, like, you know what, I'm gonna just walk there anyway. I never did that. So again, I am very blessed here in Switzerland to be able to go to the train station at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, and knowing like nothing is gonna happen to me. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, obviously, and unfortunately, women encounter more hassle, even in Switzerland. But generally speaking, it's pretty damn safe. And as far as Italy goes, and the parts of town, like the towns that I've been to, I also always felt pretty safe. And this is something I have a newfound gratitude for. Closing thoughts. During and after a trip like this, of course, one does wonder, could I live here? And I'm very grateful for the experience, you know, having been able to not just, you know, being a couple of days here, a couple of days there, but really try to get into the culture of the city and really try to live there. I think I would be curious to go back and spend more time, but just in one place. For me, Nashville stole my heart, although Memphis is a very close second. So I would like to return to Nashville, present my music, network with people, possibly record something. And it just, I got this tingly feeling like, okay, my camera died on me twice. So I could definitely see myself going back to Nashville, spending some more time there. Could I see myself now moving there forever and just, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Not now. I'll say, don't know if I could look past the things that really bug me. Although the things that I thought were amazing were like the most amazing things in that field that I think I've ever experienced, you know, music and the people and everything. So yeah, those are just my 2 cents. Some impressions from my trip to the USA, and I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao, ciao.